What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 34. I think that's our Will Pulisic episode. Even if it is, I couldn't pick that guy out of a lineup. My name is Zach Graham, your host here on the North End Podcast, joined midweek, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. It's Ian Michaud. We call him E, a.k.a. Lee James, a.k.a. Drew E.C. Dior, a.k.a. Easterdamus, a.k.a. Pap E. O'Daniel, a.k.a. Chili Willy, a.k.a. E. Jan Stonkel. E, like I said, midweek pod here. Did our St. Louis recap back on Sunday. Here to talk Montreal preview and everything else going on in the world of Austin FC. But first, my friend, midweek, weather's nice. How you feeling?
Doing all right. Excited to talk a little Montreal-Austin FC matchup here, get our boys back on the pitch and get this, tough taste out of our mouth after the opening day match. And, just we got a lot of things to correct, and I'm excited for the team to do that, and should be a great match.
Yeah, and there's not going to be a ton of time to catch our breath after Saturday. It's a jam-packed schedule as we have now gotten. We've turned the calendar over to March, but let's start with that Montreal preview. A little talk about what's coming to Q2 on Saturday. This will be the second all-time meeting between these two teams, and a lot of returning faces on that Montreal side, but some of the faces that are gone were some of the most important pieces for this team. We talked about Montreal a good bit in the offseason, but let's have a little refresher here. First, new head coach, right? Wilfried Nancy to Columbus. And so Montreal, in his stead, brought in Hernan Losada. And for those, I think like both of us, who don't know a ton about Losada, 40 years old. So I believe, if not still the youngest, when he was hired back in January 2021, as the manager of DC United. He was the youngest head coach in MLS. Only lasted about 15 months there, was let go after an Open Cup win last year for DC in April. And now back this December in MLS as the manager here at Montreal. So obviously there was not a ton of success there during his short stint at DC, but clearly some belief, and you would have to imagine that Montreal, not the only team that thinks this guy can be a success as a manager, right? I think there's probably some good buzz, or was some good buzz around this guy because of his, relative inexperience as a coach. Certainly Montreal saw some things from him at DC, enough to bring him in here with another project with kind of full of young guys at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got big shoes to fill. His time in DC, obviously with a very untalented roster. There's only so much, a manager can do, a coach can do there in that situation. So Montreal saw something in him for sure. And, they've had a good eye for coaches and players as well, and developing them. They're obviously in a bit of a transitional kind of rebuild year. And this is definitely a challenge for the young coach. But like you said, obviously a young guy, the youngest in the league at the time. And, with that, there's room for growth, especially if you're a young coach like that, or, if you're a 22-year-old young player, mistakes happen and you grow and get better.
Yeah, you keep pushing forward, especially only in week 2 of the season. Again, we mentioned there Wilfried Nancy, big shoes to fill indeed, as the team that was second place in the East last season. I don't think anybody, even, probably the most diehard of CF Montreal fans would have any delusions of grandeur here and think that they would be in that top 4 in the Supporter Shield race again. But it is interesting to say, or to like looking at the MLS.com preview, like the predictions for this team, we also had them low in our predictions, but I don't think anybody on that panel picked them higher than 10th in the East. And that's interesting with a team that is returning 8 starters here. It seems like maybe that's a little bit off the board, not the norm for a team with that much consistency in their starting 11, but like those three guys that they lost in the starting lineup, maybe three of their 4 or 5 most important players. And certainly from a talent perspective, you look at the names that are now out, I guess the key departures, if you will.
Yep.
Obviously, Georgi Mihailovic, his 2 years there, just absolutely above average at worst. And there's a reason that he was transferred to the Eredivisie, right, the Dutch league, last season. Then they also lost Alistair Johnson, who's now at Celtic in the Scottish Premiership. He was just there for that one season, but another young guy, Canadian international, and another Canadian international in Ishmael Kone, the 20-year-old who was part of the World Cup squad out there this summer. He also just spent one season with the first team last year. So like they have this, and again, he's now with Watford in the English Championship. So again, you can tell the quality of players that left this side in the offseason. And I don't think, looking at who they've brought in and who they've brought up, because this is a very young roster at this point, especially in those positions that they're trying to replace. Some bigger names, I guess, Aaron Herrera. They brought him in a trade. We'll remember him fondly, maybe not so fondly, but we'll remember him well from his days at Real Salt Lake, 124 appearances for RSL. One of the better right backs in the league, immediate starter for this team. They also added George Campbell in the trade market from Atlanta. 21-year-old, 16 starts last year for Atlanta, with that somewhat struggling Atlanta United side last year, but both of those guys going to play some important roles here for Montreal. Kamal Miller is still there, one-time member of Austin FC, just for a moment in that expansion draft a little over 2 years ago. Boy, would it be nice to have him. It's not the first time we've said that about Kamal Miller, but would it be nice to have him in that center back depth chart right now? The captain is still Sam Piette, I believe is how you say that. If you remember that guy, kind of looks like a rugby player.
For sure. He's a brute. I really like his game, though.
Yeah.
He's a great leader. He's obviously physical. I don't know how he lasts 90 minutes with all that muscle mass. Chugging BCAs or protein shakes in the locker room at halftime. But, yeah, look, this – even with all this kind of turnover that they have, it's a bit misleading. Yeah. Like you said, 8 returning starters, some very impactful players gone, but this is a team that has continuity, has chemistry. And every team is dangerous in this league. And we saw on our first match that you can't go in thinking that, something's in the bag. So, even though, again, we find ourselves in a situation where we're more talented than the opposing roster coming in, that doesn't necessarily translate to 3 points. And the boys got to go out there and get the job done by a team that, isn't going to beat themselves. Like, we can say that about them. They might not be the most talented team, but they're not going to beat themselves, and they're not going to put themselves in shitty positions to potentially not walk away with some points. So yeah, they're in for an interesting year, a team to watch for sure, because they could make some noise, even though they're looking like they're not going to be the most talented team out, just based on playing together as a team, having that chemistry with 8 returning starters. So yeah, we can't take them lightly.
Yeah, 100% agree. And they did lose 2-0 at Inter Miami last week. Piette, though, playing every bit of the captain, those ratings you see on some of the soccer sites, like I'm looking at the FOTMob ratings here for that game. Piette with the 8.1, by far the highest on that Montreal side. So he's just as solid as ever. They did re-sign. They only have one DP right now, according to the Montreal website, which, again, we know that those rosters are maintained by the league on all the team sites and aren't always up to date. But according to that, only 27 players on the roster. They did trade Kai Kamara, 16-year veteran, third all-time in MLS goals scored. They traded him to the Chicago Fire last week. For what it's worth, was for $250K in GAM, split evenly between this season And next, and he had requested a trade, I want to say like 6 weeks ago. So they finally moved him right before the season. Chicago sense. Certainly needy up top. Again, I said they part of the reason we discussed them so much in the offseason was it looked like Victor Wanyama, their only DP right now, it looked like he wasn't going to come back. And then late in the offseason did decide for maybe lack of interest from other teams. He did return on a DP deal. And they had Matko Milhevich, I believe is how you pronounce that. He was kind of Mihailovic, and holy cow, with those two guys' names being so similar. He was supposed to replace Mihailovic at the 10 there for this team. And I had heard from people who know more about this guy than we do that he was really promising in that position. Last week, right before the opener, injured, out 2 to 3 months minimum. So again, other teams around the league feeling that injury bug. We'll talk about our best ball team later, which is feeling the injury bug. So 19-year-old homegrown Nathan Saliba taking over now for Milhevich at the 10 while he is out. So again, just those spots right now are being filled, the spots where that have been vacated, being filled by younger, inexperienced players, albeit talented. Like I think from what I've read about Saliba, he is a decent prospect at worst. But he's, again, 19 and one of 9 players on this roster with homegrown designation. So again, some of those, like one of them I think is Aaron Herrera, who's clearly not homegrown for Montreal, just carries that designation, similar to Alfonso Ocampo Chavez on Austin's roster. But 9 homegrown designations. Nonetheless, we talked about the Kai Kamara trade, and we talked about them dropping their opening match at Miami last week. Another note from that game, their goalkeeper, James Pantemis, was injured in the 83rd minute, came out today. He'll miss between 2 and 6 weeks. So a really wide range of potential missed time there for their starter. He was replaced by Jonathan Soroy, I believe is how you pronounce that. He came on for his MLS debut, so should make his first MLS start at Q2 this weekend. He's 21 years old. I thought that would, being so young, I thought that would be his professional debut. He did play the last 2 seasons from ages 19 to 20 in the Canadian Premier League.
Okay.
I have admittedly zero idea about the quality of that league. It looks like there's 10 or 12 teams. I've never even heard of it. So I imagine it's like USL quality or maybe even a step below that.
Yeah, I don't assume that they're getting 20,000 fans up there in Saskatchewan or Mississauga.
Yeah, wherever it is. That's good pronunciations, though, from you.
Yeah, come on.
Well, you're a North guy. You're closer to that border up there. So looking back on last year's match, again, this is one that I think certainly you and I look back fondly upon. The 1-0 win for Austin FC. A man down in that one. That was, of course, a Ted Uncle reffed match. A lot of cards in that game. 5 of them, actually, all for Austin FC. None on that CF Montreal side. We did see that was one of Danny Pereira's 2 red cards last season. I think, that's also the match where he was already on yellow card suspension watch with 4. He picks up a yellow in the 6th minute, so he's going to be suspended the next match. Then he catches a red. So, just obviously Danny looking to be a little bit less handsy, less physical in terms of crossing that yellow card line this season. But then in that 67th minute, the kind of just beautiful, just out of the blue breakaway that Austin had as they were just sat the entire second half, basically, in that low block trying to keep Montreal out. But John Gallagher gets free on the left, beautiful low cross. Maxi Arruti kind of chips it over the keeper, and then they hold on for the 1-0 win. So all-time Austin 1-0 against this Montreal team, trying to make it 2-0 this weekend. And so let's talk about the what we think is going to happen with the lineup here. I guess I'll throw it to you first, and let's talk lineup desires rather than predictions at this point. What do you want to see from the starting 11?
Well, if you could fire it at me instead of throwing it to me, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, you're right. That's my bad. That's breaking protocol there.
What do I want to see with this starting 11? Okay, so obviously we need to, really the only two spots we're looking at that are potential substitution spots are Wolff and Kip, in my opinion. I think those are the only two guys who you would look to if you were potentially trying to make a change. Right. I obviously do not agree with the ring over Wolff position. So I still hope to see Owen the Lobito there doing his thing. And on the back line, it's been tough, man. I have racked my brain about how I would try to approach this situation as like a player and what I would appreciate from a coach in that regard. I'm talking as if I'm Kip in this situation.
Sure.
And obviously we saw Kip in some spot work last year where he did look a little more comfortable being a substitute as opposed to being a starter. Not that he was always the sturdiest of players for us on the back line or someone who we really trusted with the ball at his feet. But look, I think we're going to get Kip again on the start. And I do want that. I do. I think obviously, there has to be I don't know if there has to be some form of punishment. Like obviously this is Kip's job. And if you had a job in the regular world and you made a mistake such as this, there would be some sort of punishment, lined up, some sort of repercussion, something you have to speak to a manager or whatever it may be. But losing this game is punishment enough. And you can't really just pile on in this situation. So I hope Josh, backs up what he's been saying publicly and that they're going to support Kip and make sure that he is still feeling part of the team, feeling confident. And look, this is a good spot to get your confidence back up. This is this kind of fell nicely to us. If this was a different scheduled game and we had a really strong, difficult team coming in here, and with Cascante out, obviously the way that our last game ended, that could be really dangerous. But this is a perfect spot with their injuries, the lack of talent that they have on the opposing side. So I still want to see Kip there. And I do expect him to, I hope everyone's ready for him to play.
Yeah. In some capacity, right?
Yes. You have to get it out of your head that he's not going to play.
Yeah.
Because we have 3 starting center backs. Like we have 3 center backs on the team.
Including him. Yeah.
Including him, one of which has never played with the Verde jersey on.
Yeah.
The other one just completed his first game.
Yeah.
So we have to be ready for him to play. And I think, Band-Aid style, rip it off right from the rip. Let's see what he's got. Let's see if he's there. If his head's there and if it's not, we can make an adjustment. Not that you want to shoot that substitution too early and kind of shoot yourself in the foot, but it's all hands on deck right now. And this is a very, very winnable game and a game that we could really use to kind of clear this taste out of our mouth.
Yeah. And really kickstart the regular season, not just the regular season, but CCL that's coming up. You don't want to fire that substitution too early. You don't want to fire that one in there too early, right? So I think I'm pretty much with you. I think more so for me than the personnel decisions is that I don't think a coaching staff should give up on the plan that was clear now from the last month of the preseason. They ran with that same 11 through the last 4 preseason games. Whether they came off the bench or started the preseason matches, that group was together. And I don't think that 15 minutes of losing our heads or even one player losing his head should completely blow up the strategy, the formation, the new tactics, whether or not people agree with the new tactics or not. Let's let this coaching staff that, again, helped build a Final Four team last year. Let's, I think like Hernan put it on We Are Austin TV, let's let the coaching staff cook a little bit and not just totally let's not us as the casuals, no matter how into this team you and I or anybody else is as a fan, We are not in that locker room. We are not in those coaches' offices. Let's let them let this thing play out a little bit before we start calling for, oh, they should have started this guy. They should start that guy. Like, they
Absolutely.
know what they have. And we have veterans backing up some of these younger players. Like, maybe we're giving Zahn, which I think that's what I would add from your desires, is that I think, or not desires, but maybe more the prediction side, that a lot of people are calling for Johnny G to start over Zani. And I think that's totally fair. But again, I just don't necessarily think that if we're working with these groups, these units, whatever you want to call it, like we have been for the last month, I don't think that I want to see them completely throw that out the window. Again, I'll trust if we see Johnny G out there, then obviously the coaches think that he's the better fit right now. But for what they're trying to do, I do think Zani should get another. Like, he was not bad the other night. Like, Johnny was obviously really good too, but I didn't think Kolmanic was bad. He just needs to be less one-dimensional. We talked about that on Sunday.
I totally agree. It's not like the coaching staff put this formation together right before the St. Louis game. Like, this is what we're going to do. It's like, no, we've been building this the entire offseason. This is how we want to play. And to have one poor performance, I would be more concerned. And I think anyone who is a fan should be more concerned if after the first game we went, well, there goes that, and just completely scrap the plan, something that we've been building towards, and like a vision that we have for this club. So yes, I'm right there with you. We stay the course. We gotta get through some tough injuries, time here. Hopefully we can we'll talk on some potential additional, talent coming in that we may be able to acquire, but we got to stay the course right now. And I think that the same 11 that we've had for this entire preseason, this one that started the first game, is the right lineup to go with.
Yeah, and I think, like, if I'm going to make my prediction again, I think my prediction is the same as my desires, although I'm less confident in that second center back spot. Like, I think the other 10 are the same, but filling Julio's spot, I'm not surprised if Tarek does get the start.
No,
and I think the majority of Austin fans think that Tarek is going to get the start. I don't think a lot of people are on board with, and maybe you just throw Kip Keller back out there. And even like there was some, and we can talk about Wolff's media availability here in a second, but there was even some confusion that I'm reading from some of the reporters in attendance with Wolff's presser today on how they're reading his comments about Kip Keller. But before we get to that, I guess let's go ahead and get our score predictions on the record. Again, this match on Saturday is starting a stretch of 5 matches in 15 days, 3 MLS regular season matches, both legs of the CCL first round against Violette. So I guess I will throw it to you, and I know your brand, so I will ask you, how much is Austin FC winning by on Saturday?
Look, I think this team is going to come out focused, ready to play, ready to win. We got a young keeper in the net across from us. They've got some kids in very important lineups in this formation. I hope this team is hungry. I hope this team is rabid to come out and get 3 points here, and to really, because not only that, and it's like, what can you do for your teammate, for your brother who is like down right now, And I know 100% that people have been in his ear. Hey man, one mistake. Hey, chin up, next play, we'll get through this together. And that's great. And that's well and good. And you can do that. But another way to pick them up is to go out and kick the shit out of the opposing team and let week 1 just be in our rear view for the rest of this season. Just, not to compare the two teams in terms of talent or anything, but just the same way that Argentina did in the World Cup.
Right.
And that's how you respond. So I think we're going to come out. I think we're going to punch this team in the mouth. I think the boys are going to be ready to play. And I'm going to go ahead and go 3-1 again, just because I still feel, we're shaky at the back line. We understand what we have up front.
It's hard to pick a clean sheet right now, right?
Absolutely. It's hard to. And that's not a slight at Stuver either.
Of course not.
But these shots, they're coming in, especially when, you're getting some turnovers in the back end. So I'm going to go ahead and go 3-1 here, Austin. in a pretty convincing win.
Yeah, maybe it's a bummer. I have the same thing. I had 3-1. I can't pick the clean sheet right now, but I do think the offense that, again, the XG didn't back it up. It was like 1.46, if I recall correctly, this last weekend. But like, I think just another week of training together, the motivation from that loss that undoubtedly all of these guys are feeling. It's a prideful group. We know it's a group that will scratch and claw, and was a header off the post away from pulling a point out of their ass at the end of that game.
Absolutely.
I think they're going to come out and make a statement offensively here. So I'm with you. 3 goals. Can't pick the clean sheet. So 3-1 from both of us here. Promise we won't do that for every match going forward. So the Wolff media availability today, and again, shout out Phil West over at The Striker, and not a sponsor, but I will say, I'm not sure when this ends. It might be today, but right now they're having a special discount offer. I think it's $19 for a year of The Striker, and some of the best, if not the best, independent soccer journalism right now in the country. So I'm going to take some of his quotes from today's media availability from his article today, but not all of it. Because if you want those goods, you got to go sign up there to read Phil's work. But there's a couple quotes in here that I thought stuck out to me. We'll talk about the one about Kip. And this is where I think in my head, I had some debate reading specifically Eric Goodman's interpretation of this quote about Kip Keller. Here's how Phil said it, or has it in his article. He says, "We've got to ride with him and work through it. You don't avoid it, you run towards it." And I think both of us kind of agreeing with that mindset even before we read this. Help him find solutions and overcome it. Again, this happens to players in all sports and all levels. And then Phil says, with just three healthy center backs on the roster, including Keller, part of the mission for Wolff and the rest of the staff this week is to get the 22-year-old's mindset right for future matches, including Saturday's CF Montreal home match and a trip to the Dominican Republic on Tuesday. So again, I think like I was reading Goodman's tweet where he said that the quote in essence to him meant that Keller would have to work his confidence back up before playing again. I just disagree with that interpretation. But maybe that turns out to be right. I just thought that was interesting from two guys who were both at the same press conference to have kind of two different interpretations of that. And again, I think both of us side with Phil here in thinking that Kip will play in some capacity against Montreal on Saturday. Any thoughts on those quotes or what's going on there?
I mean, yeah, it would be great if we had the opportunity to get Kip some spot work and build him back up, but we don't. Like, I don't know what else to say to people who are continuously saying, "Oh, well, Kip's got to get his confidence back up and then we can get him back in the line." It's like, nah, bro. Like, no, that would be awesome. If that was the case, it would be great. And yes, I would be for it.
Right.
For sure. If fucking Ruben Gabrielson walked through the door, it wouldn't be like, "Oh, well, we got to make sure Kip's in there." It's like, no, dude. So yeah, I don't understand what Goodman's saying there. We don't have that option. There is no option on the table where it's like, well, we can just sit Kip and get him some time when we can. It's all hands on deck back there now. You know, it's like, are people really super satisfied with the alternative of just playing every single player out of place?
Right.
Like, no. So yeah, obviously with Phil. And I think coach has been handling it just right.
About as well as he could, I think, in this situation. And another thing in this article that I think points to the fact that not just the staff, but the players around Kip are trying to kind of reinforce him, give him that confidence that his career is not falling apart because of one mistake. Because I think what they're pointing to, and Josh made a point of this today, Phil says, Wolff made it clear that Jared Stroud has ceased to be on his nice list, feeding into the hearsay that Stroud engaged in some on-field trickery that convinced Keller to pass him the ball. Quote, "It's also Jared asking for the ball, calling for the ball. It was unfortunate." Asked to clarify that allegation about Stroud, coach said, "By all intents and purposes, that's what it seemed like. That's what it sounded like." And the reflection from the guys. So It doesn't sound like anybody in the Austin locker room is very happy with Jared Stroud. And I think that's just another thing that they can point to Kip in saying, dude, like, this isn't all your fault. Like, I would imagine some of those guys said, man, if that might have happened to me too. If Jared Stroud, a guy who I had played with the entire previous season. And like, honestly, because Jared Stroud never played for us and Kip didn't play very much either, those guys probably worked out together more or were in drills on the same team together more than most of those regular starters. So I guess the last thing I wanted to point to here, Wolff did make more comments. He mentioned again the possibility of Alex Ring playing some minutes at center back. And instead of going towards Adam Lundqvist, who I think us and some others had speculated could play some center back, he did specifically mention Nick Lima and the potential for him to fill in at center back. Because again, even if Kip continues to play, we need that fourth and fifth option in case of emergency. So they're prepping all options.
Absolutely. And like we keep saying, it's all hands on deck. And if we have to move some of these guys around out of necessity, we will do it.
Yeah.
And we have outlined that, for the Austin FC fan who's getting ready to watch the game, be ready for Kip to play. Mm-hmm. You're going to see Alex Ring at extended center back position for the next 2 months.
Period of time. Yeah.
For as long as Cascante is out, you might see Lima there. We shift Hector to Lima's spot. Like it's just makeshift right now. But I do want to touch on what Coach said about Stroud, because I thought that was pretty damning.
Yeah.
He could have easily tiptoed around that.
Yeah, gone the other way.
Could have just, we're not worried about it, not our team. And that's a very acceptable answer in those situations. But 100%. That is not a non-answer. And,
absolutely.
Coaches and professional sports players, athletes are good at giving non-answers. That's usually you have to.
They're usually trained to give non-answers.
Yes. So, but for him to come out and say right off the bat, like that, he did that, was pretty damning. And look, man, there's some bad blood here now, and I'm all for it.
Hey, I can't wait for August 20th. Yeah. I feel like they're going to go up there and put it on those boys, but that's a long way from now.
Look, I remember when we had somebody on talking about road trips. I think it was Hernan, and he didn't want to go.
We're going now.
We're going to St. Louis now. We're going to St. Louis now.
Well, you mentioned, obviously we talked about Cascante, the injury on Sunday. We do have a prognosis now, and probably irresponsible of us on this podcast to go over half an hour and not mention specifically Julio will be reevaluated in 8 weeks. So 2-month minimum here for Cascante. And you mentioned that maybe we could find some help from outside the team. We can talk about the Xavier Arriaga rumor here in a second, but I did want to talk about, just for a minute with you, 2-month minimum on Julio. To me, and maybe I'm being too pessimistic here, but to me, that reads as 3 months, because how long is it going to take for Julio to get back into game shape after being out? He can't run right now. So 2 months off the pitch, I think it's going to be a longer absence if he's not being reevaluated for 8 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And before you even said, it's one thing to be healthy. It's another thing to be ready to play. And if he's out 2 months, 2 months, and to be really evaluated, he's not going to be able to get that conditioning work. Maybe some pool stuff.
Right.
You could probably try to get some pool stuff in or something like that after a couple of weeks. But it's going to be a 3-month timetable for him to be who he is again. And, that's also, it's a pesky injury.
Yeah. Any sort of soft tissue injury there.
You're dealing with the groinal.
That's been years on and off with that groin there. Groinal. The trade rumor kind of floated around, I think, first on MLS Extra Time. I think it was Matt Doyle saying that he had heard buzz now that it appears Jackson Reagan has taken Arriaga's spot there for the Sounders. So Arriaga on the trade block. But Austin FC, not the only team interested there. I don't think he named specific teams, but he said, I think, 4, maybe 5 teams inquiring there. And so for me, again, this is a guy who has played a sizable role on one of the better franchises in the league, 26 starts last year for Seattle. Obviously not great in the MLS regular season, but this is a guy who is a CONCACAF champion, right? These guys just played in the Club World Cup. So you could certainly do worse than adding somebody with that sort of pedigree in the league. I just don't know how expensive he's going to be and if that's really the option. Like, it'll be interesting to see what Austin does to plug this hole, whether it is totally internally and it's a combination of Ring and Lima and whomever else in that 4th/5th center back spot. We can't get help from FC2. Those guys can't come up. We can only send first team contracts down. So that's just something to watch, I think, over the coming days and weeks, if it stretches out that long, to see where Arriaga potentially moves, whether it's to Austin or somewhere else. What would your thoughts be on that? Because, like, if you think about it, man, like, I imagine the price for him is going to be like you're paying for a starting center back because of the competition for this guy now. We're not the only team that's center back needy in the league. And if we're buying this guy, GAM, actual funds, whatever it is, I don't think we're bringing this guy in to be a starter once Julio comes back. So I think that's a roadblock to Austin really being willing to maybe pony up what it's going to take to acquire this guy. But we'll see. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I got plenty of thoughts on
it. Well, fire them.
I'll start with a great quote.
Okay.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Okay. That's
you
true.
know. And this Cascante injury, I don't think it can be overstated how tough it is for this team right now. I mean, outside of a Seba, Diego, Stuver injury, this might be the one spot where we just literally could not afford to lose him.
Right.
And in an ideal world, I would assume that this team would have been looking for help a little later down the road after the season has somewhat progressed. Now, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong here because I don't know necessarily all of the signing protocols or what have you, but we have a senior
spot open.
We have a senior spot open. So we have a place for somebody. And I mean, like I said, ideally that's somebody else that we're bringing in a little later. But right now, all the more reason that we need to support Kip and that he needs to be mentally checked in with this team, because compounding this issue by, bringing in this guy early who will also take time to get acclimated to how we play, is just a stopgap for a little while. So while I understand the need for CBs right now, I hope we don't press and overpay for somebody. And I hope we rely more so on the players we already have on the team who know how we want to play. And when they play to their ability, like, we're good, man. Again, I said it on the last pod, play that game 100 times. This outcome, the way it happened, happens one time.
Right.
And we lived it. So we got to get over it. I hope everyone's had their emotional reaction to it.
I've certainly been through like all the stages of grief at this point, and I'm ready to go again.
Yeah. We're back now. We talked about it. We need somebody, but we need them at the right price. Where I'll stand. Maybe
we poach somebody from a good USL team
for
the right price, which is probably a little cheaper than getting an Arriaga type center back option.
There's plenty of options.
Yeah.
Plenty of places to look.
So again, I will trust in Sean Rubio and the front office to get something done. Or if they think that we're good with what we have, then I'll trust that too.
Yeah.
As shaky as it would feel. Let's break into the last business day segment here. Again, last business day, talking Austin FC2. Not a ton of news here. We did get one item this afternoon, actually a trade at the next pro level. Austin FC2 announced that they agreed to a trade with NYCFC2, and Austin acquired an international roster spot in exchange for cash. That is the extent of that press release. So I'm not sure how many, again, I think we went through it a few weeks ago, talking about the roster regulations and rules for Next Pro. I don't remember. I think it's actually more international spots that you can have. But what I'm wondering is, does this have to do with any of the, what I think was a little bit of smoke around those other draft picks yesterday on Instagram? Valentin Noel, Jackson Valti posting some looked like they were going swimming maybe after training yesterday at their apartments. Looked like it was in the Domain area, somewhere around there. They were having fun. Sal Mazzaferro posts an Instagram post saying that things are falling into place. Located, or the location tag was in Austin. So all three of those guys still in Austin. Have not been announced as official FC2 players yet, but I think, and you've got an international there in Valentin Noel, who was originally from France. Like, maybe we're getting those guys announced here in the next week or so. Because again, that season's supposed to kick off in a little over 3 weeks. And again, we've talked before about how much we want to see our draft picks stick around and be brought up through the system and see what happens with those guys as they start their professional careers.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is obviously our first experience with this FC2 team. And I don't necessarily know if that's writing on the wall for those guys to get signed. But I think where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think that makes sense. And then you parlay in the good old Instagram snooping.
Yeah.
Been doing. I'm glad those boys are having fun, enjoying the city for sure. And I would love to see us retain all of those guys.
Yeah, something is certainly afoot trading for an international spot. So we'll keep our eyes on that FC2 feed. Their next match, again, we had nothing reported about this past weekend's match, which was, I think, against Houston Christian University. A little bit of a step up here. This match is on Saturday, so same day as the first team. They're going down to play Rio Grande Valley FC. That is a USL championship side. They were 6th in the West last year, 13th overall on 49 points. Again, 27 total teams last year in the USL Championship League. So right about kind of a mid-table team there. Certainly not a bad USL side there. So that should be a good test for FC2. Still doesn't appear like we're getting many updates at this point from their social media accounts, but that's what we can look forward to from Austin FC2 this weekend. Again, first match supposed to be weekend of March 24th. No schedule yet for Next Pro. Let's talk about some of the player news, and there was some between last pod and now here in MLS. Orlando extended kind of their young, I don't know if phenom is the right word, but certainly looking to be, an all-star caliber player in his career here. Facundo Torres extended through 2027 with Orlando. And looked like there was some big like buyout clauses in there where it would be a huge fee if he was to leave before then. So it looks like the young player there for Orlando going to be sticking around for a long time. NYCFC making some significant moves here. They did finally finalize the full transfer of Santi Rodriguez, I think 2 days ago. So that's big for them. Then today, bringing back James Sands, who started 26 matches for NYCFC in 2021. Again, that's their MLS Cup winning season. He debuted with the club at age 16, so been coming up through this NYCFC system, but was with Rangers in the Scottish Premiership since January of last year and made 41 appearances across all competitions for Rangers, but he had not started a league match since December. So falling out of favor, NYCFC makes the move to bring him back, primarily defensive midfielder, and can play some center back. So another good move, NYCFC bolstering. Like, this is why we had them picked still, I think, top 5 in the East, is that club and their ownership group can pull together some talent on short notice.
Absolutely.
Couple others here. Chicago Fire signed Greek international forward Georgios Koutsias. A lot of Georgios names popping up in MLS over the last month. They got him from PAOK there. in Greece. He's 19 years old. 3 goals, 1 assist in 750 minutes on loan with Volos this season. He's going to be a U22 initiative signing for the Fire. They are still reportedly looking for a DP level striker. Also, again, traded for Kai Kamara last week, but apparently still in the market trying to upgrade that position. Timbers signed Frank Boli from, this is a pronunciation, Ferencváros in the Hungarian league.
Oh.
So 29-year-old forward, 42 goals, 11 assists, and 126 appearances out there in Hungary, including 2 goals in 77 minutes in the 2020-21 Champions League group stage. So certainly some high-level soccer has been played by Boli, now going to Portland to help bolster their attack. And then the last one here, our boy, Ricky Puig, now the Galaxy's 3rd DP. At 23 years old, he qualifies as a young DP. And when you're looking up the rules about designated players, you search, young DP, MLS, make sure you got that safe search on, right? I see.
I was going to say, you better add MLS.
Yeah, so LA Galaxy adding Ricky Puig as a young DP so they can still have their 3 U22 initiative players. So good business there by the questionable front office, at least according to Galaxy fans. And that does it for the MLS moves. Any notes from you on those bits of news?
You touched on it with NYCFC. Obviously, you touched on our love for the Pooch man.
Yeah.
And you warned the people about Googling young DP. So good job, man. That's one of your best little segments there.
I appreciate it. We work hard here on the North End podcast. Now let's get to some of the nonsense. We'll get to the betting picks. We'll get to the Best Ball League update. And I think let's just start with the Best Ball League update. It was fun to finally see some fantasy points scored there in week 1. We Are Austin TV got us kicked off. Walker Zimmerman on their roster. Walker Zimmerman, first goal of the MLS season. But We Are Austin TV sitting in second place behind Moon Tower, which, again, this is why they pay our buddy Tom Bogert the big bucks, I guess. He put in the call for them to win the league. It's only 1 week, but 60 points here in week 1 for Moon Tower's team on the back of 20 points from Daniel Gazdag, 13 points from Julian Carranza. I mean, that Philly stack there, right? 4-1 win over Columbus. 2 goals, 2 assists for Gazdag. The other 2 goals coming from Carranza. 9 points from Bernadeschi and 8 points from Joe Willis in net. Did not hurt either. 60 points for Moon Tower. 50 for We Are Austin TV, who got 13 points from Thiago Almada out in Atlanta. Almost all of those points coming in the last 10 minutes of that match as he scored 2 goals to get Atlanta the win. They also got 14 from Walker Zimmerman, 9 out of Dane St. Clair, shutting out Dallas in their opening match. And then you've got us and Texas Ring of Fire bringing up the rear. Tough weeks for us. Every team was affected by some DNPs from the LAFC, LA Galaxy postponement. That certainly hurt us. No Carlos Vela, no Ricky Puig. And then the injury bug hitting us, I think, the hardest, although some of these other teams also took some knocks. Raul Rui Diaz for We Are Austin going to be out, I think, at least a month. Soft tissue injury for him. But we'll be selfish here and focus on all of our woes after week 1, licking our wounds. Lorenzo Insigne out, I believe, at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. It did not look good. And then Taxi Fountas in DC out 4 to 6 weeks. So we are down to 3 forwards after week 1. So Carlos Vela, Cucha Hernandez, Enzo Capetti. Come on, boys. You got to carry us till we can get some of those other guys back, or until we get to that summer transfer window, which is too far away at this point. Texas Ring of Fire, again, is sort of like us. They caught 3 DNPs, and neither of us hitting on any of those big double-digit performances, but they did get 9 out of Christian Espinoza. They got 9 out of our boy Leo Väisänen in his debut. But 37 points for us here on the North End Pod, 34 for Texas Ring of Fire. So just our weekly best ball update, and I'm looking forward to us having a better week here in week 2.
Long season, baby.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. So let's get to our betting picks. Again, We just want to do this, make these public throughout the year, and we'll see how it turns out. We did end up slightly profiting here, plus 0.3 units on these bets. We went 2-2. Okay, so we hit Miami plus 150 against Montreal. We hit Seattle minus 125. That game was on, I believe, Sunday night. They took care of business at home in a big way. Seattle looking very dangerous.
Yeah.
SKC did not get it done on the road for us up in Portland. We acknowledged that was going to be a tough match, but 1-0 loss. Kind of an odd play there on the where they gave up the goal in like the 6th minute. Ben Sweat was running down the line to kind of just to defend there on his left side. Ended up keeping Mosquera onside when Portland got the ball back. Kind of a sneaky goal there. So 1-0 loss. We lose the SKC pick. And then talk about brutal. Toronto plus 180, up 2-1 going into extra time. 2 stoppage time goals for DC. So Toronto plus 180 falls through the cracks just at the death for us. So that was a bummer. But again, plus 3 units on the week. So it's profit. We will always take that. And let's get into some of our week 2 picks here. We teased this one, and I think most people can get on board with this one with us. We're going to take Austin plus 115 at home against Montreal. Both of us picking the bounce back win here. So yeah, we will take Austin plus 115. I'll toss it to you, I guess, for our next pick, if you got it.
I like that. I mean, we tried to figure out how far we would slide there and how far we would be disrespected, but
yeah,
them at plus 115. Yes, I am a big fan of that. Looking at the board, we're looking at Charlotte FC again, right? Plus 160. Playing that St. Louis team, obviously the 2 newest teams in the league, right? Yeah,
Charlotte, the expansion team last year. St. Louis, the only one this year.
I always get Charlotte and Cincy.
Yeah, and Cincy also a younger team, but did come in before.
Word, like them there. Charlotte, obviously a more talented roster. St. Louis, it should be rocking, should be a party in there, but they already threw a party. And hoping
at our house,
they threw a party at our house. So yeah, hopefully they're coming down a little bit, and we like that action there at plus 160.
Yeah, like that one as well. We will also take Philadelphia plus 110 on the road at Inter Miami. I think regardless of matchup this season, at least as things stand now for Philly, if we get Philly at plus money, we're just going to take them.
Yeah.
Because they are, I think, in my eyes, the clear best team at this point. Obviously, we haven't seen the Galaxy. We haven't seen LAFC yet because of the postponement. We also haven't seen Chicago Fire. They're supposed to be maybe spoon contenders, so not really worried about the Fire. But I think Philly right now, clear number 1 in the league. And I think getting them plus 110 is very, very solid. We were eyeing Cincinnati, though. So do you want to talk about Cincy? Oh, playing Orlando, so not a great matchup, but it's maybe the odds here that we like.
Yep, they're down there in Orlando, which is a tough game, and we'll be the first to admit that. But you get them at plus 240, and it's really hard to not like that. Just given the talent on that roster, they can go in there and win a difficult game on the road. And, again, this is a numbers game, really. You're just trying to find some spots where you can get the most amount of profit in there. Yeah. So we like that plus 240 there. And I feel good about that one, too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, always going to be fun to cheer for, that front line, Lucho and Brenner and Vasquez, all those guys, which I think all 3 of those guys on the Texas Ring of Fire team. So I'm sure they're with us on that pick as well. Last one here. Another tough matchup here, but I think LA Galaxy plus 215 at FC Dallas. Obviously, Dallas looking to bounce back as well, so we know they're going to bring it. But I ultimately think that the Galaxy, even with a questionable Chicharito, I think have enough talent to take this game down. Because, man, Chicharito comes out, you put Joveljic in there, and I don't think you miss much. Joveljic is obviously we're fans. So I think plus 215 LA Galaxy is going to round out our picks this week. 5 of them on the board. I guess any thoughts for you on Galaxy and Dallas? Am I overstepping there?
I'm interested to see how this Galaxy team responds to obviously the storm that is brewing around that club right now. And with that whole situation and their fans going on, the supporters groups, it may be more wise to take them on the road in these situations.
That's a good point. It is a point. Maybe it doesn't turn out to be a good one, but sure. I buy that logic.
We're framing it to where we're getting, So yes, like I said, I do want to see how this team responds to, the tumultuous kind of offseason that they've had. We know that they got very talented players.
Yeah.
Like they have a good team. So I don't hate it by any stretch of the imagination. And they could end up being just a road warrior team this year that really just goes out and gets the job done when they're playing away from home.
So 5 picks this week. Austin plus 115 at home against Montreal. Philly plus 110 at Miami. Charlotte plus 160, ruining the party in St. Louis. Galaxy plus 215 at Dallas, and Cincinnati plus 240 at Orlando. Those are the picks, and we'll see next week how they have turned out. And I think that is going to do it for us here. Second episode of the week. I think we may fall into this kind of pattern going forward, time permitting for both of us. But I think we certainly are both, we can talk about this team for a long time. And I think we certainly have enough hot air coming out of our mouths, mine especially, to fill 2 podcasts in a week. So I think we'll look Sunday, maybe a recap pod. We'll be recapping the Montreal match. We can recap Mike's wedding. So at Verdes Loco, shout out Mike, congratulations. And we'll see him and our buddy Brian on Saturday. We can also preview that CCL match on Sunday. That's coming up on Tuesday. And then, probably come back the day after that, recap CCL, preview RSL, which obviously, again, 5 matches in 15 days coming up. So the matches coming fast and furious. The podcast here on the North End will follow. Anything else for you before we get out of here?
No, the 2 a week, I think the people deserve it. And look, man, I will say this. I hope we don't hear any boo birds for Kip if he's out on the pitch.
Hell no. And again, just another reminder, don't fucking throw shit on the pitch either.
Correct.
So sorry I interrupted, but
that's really all I had. As somebody as someone who booed Kip the other night, don't do it.
You did? I didn't hear that.
Oh yeah, I booed him.
Oh, I think I was just maybe I blacked out for that part of it. Just sitting there stunned.
Maybe cut that part out. I feel like I just erased all of the good things. Like everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, we can believe him.
Hey, nobody's perfect. And we move forward.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, exactly.
My mom used to tell me that all the time. And then she would go do some real dumb shit.
All right, everybody. As the Mooch Dog has woken up, we'll go ahead and get out of here. If you have 5 seconds to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, we would greatly appreciate it. If you're listening on the YouTube channel, you can hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to know when a new episode or a live stream go live. We did go live on Monday giving away those tickets. So congrats to Jose winning those 2 tickets. And that'll do it. And we'll be back on Sunday recapping that Montreal match. We wish we were going to be at Q2, but we will be watching from afar. For Ian, I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.